Hello and welcome to our next video from Billingsgate Roman House and Baths. If you've watched some of our previous ones, you'll know my name is Kim Biddulph and I work at the Bathhouse. These videos are part of Our City Together, a project to bring cultural organisations around the city together to share lots of content and activities and ideas and information. And it's managed by the City of London Corporation, the whole thing. Today, I'm very glad that I can talk to Judith Dobie, who is an archaeological illustrator who works for Historic England. And if you have looked at any books about Roman London or medieval London and many other publications about archaeological sites, you will probably have come across an illustration by Judith. Her stuff is widely used because it's so great. And we asked Judith to create a reconstruction of our site as it would have looked in around about AD 250. And she's come. We're going to speak today about how Judith went about creating this beautiful reconstruction, which we will show you in a minute. Hi, Judith.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining me today.
That's fine. I look forward to it.
Me too. Right, let's just have a look at where we're talking about. In case you haven't seen any of these videos before, Billingsgate Roman House and Baths. So if you can see my cursor, it's down here, this actually where it says Bathhouse, this purple building here. And it's more than just a bathhouse. It was actually, we think, a domestic building possibly, and then it had a bathhouse attached to it about 100 years after it was first built. And you can see, if I get this back again, the line of the riverside wall there, and behind this map is the modern street map. And so you can see that actually, although the riverside was very close to the bathhouse originally, it's not anymore because particularly in the Victorian period, this whole section here was embanked quite far out into the river, although that actually was a process that has been going on for hundreds of years. So over to you, Judith. You're going to talk us through how you went about when we asked you to create this reconstruction, what your process was. Shall I go on to the next slide? Just let me know when you want me to move on.
Okay.
There we go.
So I visited the site, and I always like to do that. Even though, you know, in London, it's so built up, it's not, you know, it's difficult to see things, but you still get the sense of you're walking down to the river and how, although it's not as close as it was originally, it's still quite close to the river. And you get an idea of how steep the incline is. And so I saw the site, and it's always very confusing when you see the site and you don't know it. And that's what that was important to me to see that. So I visited the site, and then the way I set about it was I had a plan of the building.
So these photos here of the site on the left is one room of the house, and on the right that is part of the bathhouse, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, these walls that don't make any sense. I think in the house itself it's quite difficult to read, but in the bathhouse it's much easier, isn't it? You can see quite a lot of pieces, which I'm sure you'll take us through in a second. So do you want me to move on to your plan? Oh,
well, really, I could say that this was what I finished up with.
Yeah. And
you might say, well, if you look at the remains that you visit, when you look at that, and then you would think, well, how did I get from that to get to the finished picture? And
like that,
yes, that's right. So this is the view of the 3rd century AD, and you think, well, how on earth did I manage to make that out of the sort of jumble of remains that you see when you visit the site? Well, the thing is, I start with the plan.
Oops, I keep on pressing the wrong thing. There you go.
And that's the plan of the house. So the house was built first, and that was in the end of the 2nd century AD. And the bit that you see that's coloured blue, that's what we've actually got, what you could see if you visit the site. And the empty lines are supposition, because we don't, this is archaeology is very often like this, reconstructions are like this, that you could be certain of some things, but there's an awful lot that you've got to make an educated guess at or use your imagination to complete. And it's the case here because it might have been an L-shaped building, and the Romans did those, or it might have been a winged building, as we've gone for. So it's a winged building with a corridor, and that's our educated guess.
So this is the corridor that goes around the inside, and it was how you would get from room to room. They didn't tend. There are probably internal divisions here, but they wouldn't usually have doors from room to room like that. You would go out in the corridor and back in, which is just an interesting way the Romans built their houses. And there was a road coming down this east side of it, wasn't there?
Yes, that's right.
And I can see that you've also put these dashed lines on. What
they're the contour lines, because I want to remind myself that, you know, there was a very definite slope. There's still a slope today if you walk there. But it goes, there is almost a road that you can go up. I think it's a little bit further over St Dunstan's Hill and St Mary at Hill on this side. So it does slope up quite a lot, doesn't it? That's one of the nice things about, in a way, looking at sites like this, because although it's so long after the Romans, it still sort of echoes the Romans. You know, you get that feeling of the continuity, really.
And the back of the house was actually built into the slope, wasn't it, as well?
Yes, that's right.
They kind of, you know, flattened the site by digging into the slope. Lovely. Shall we go on?
Yes, the next one. So this is the plan of the build of the house plus the bathhouse. The bathhouse was built, as Kim said, about 100 years after, and that was in the 3rd century AD. And you can see it looks sort of slightly awkward, the way it's fitted into the courtyard. And there's a different sort of feeling about the whole site, really, isn't there, when you get
the
bathhouse, because it's not quite as well finished, and you have the feeling that things have gone downhill a bit. It's not so smart as it was originally. When the house was built, it must have been a very grand house, because it was close to the Thames, it had access to the Thames, and it would have had this very nice view looking across to Southwark. And by the time we've got to adding the bathhouse, it's added in a slightly odd way, and the walls aren't keyed in very well to the house. So there's a sort of different feeling about it.
And it probably replaced a garden or something, didn't it, in the centre? So you're losing some of that space that you had before, although of course you're gaining a bathhouse. So
yes, that's right. It would have I always thought that maybe the house would have been owned by a rich merchant, but then it might have been a commercial building. It might have been an inn, or the Romans would have called it a mansio.
It's possible, isn't it? Because it's it would be close to the port, so a good place for people to stop over if they were just coming to London.
Yes, that's right. So we look at the
next one.
Yes. Well, if you're going to do a reconstruction, you have to decide which views you're going to take. And so my view is looking westwards, and all of the best bits of the building, the bits that existed, were on the west side. And then you have to decide how high you're going to go. And I mean, the higher you go, the more you can see into things. But I always think a bird's eye view looks a little bit sort of awkward, because that's not how we expect to see buildings. Unless you're in an aeroplane or up in a tower or something. And if you go too low down, you can't see properly into the courtyard. So in this case, I wouldn't be able to see how the bathhouse is connected with the house, or I wouldn't be able to see the furnace pit. So I wanted these elements to show in my picture. So I've gone for the mid view, not too high up and not too low down.
Is that one?
That's one, yeah. So you can see where the furnace pit is, which is in that corner in there. And that's it. And you can also see how it's connected to the corridor of the main house. She's just there, that's right.
Yeah.
So that's my view that I decided. If we look at the next one. So this is a bit idiosyncratic, but not everybody would work like this, but I take a photograph of the plan and I've already decided what height I'm going to go for and my angle. So there's the photograph that I took of the plan. And then if we go on to the next one, I just projected a very simple line drawing of the building on top of that. And that gave me the basis for my structure.
And what are these crosses for?
Well, it's because I've traced bits. I wanted to overlay, I traced bits off and put them in, and those were my markers so that I could put them in exactly the right place.
Right, brilliant, thank you. And you've got the scale on here as well to give us.
Yes, I've got the scale, and I've also put in where there was a ditch, wasn't there, going down the side of the road.
Down here.
Yes, that's right. So I put that in as well.
Next.
So then I have to elaborate that. My idea now is to produce a first draft that I can send to the clients or the experts, so to make sure that I'm on the right lines before I go on too far in case I have to change things. So this is what I did next. And so that shows the building. It's built out of Kentish ragstone, and it has little sort of tile-like bricks that are earthenware, and that's what makes the sort of decorative lines. And then the roof was earthenware tiles, two sorts of tiles, ones with flanges and then ones curved ones to go over the top. And that's exactly the sort of roofs that you can see around the Mediterranean today. They're just the same.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I put in a lot of timber because I was thinking of how much heating you would have to do to keep both the bathhouse and the main house warm. And then I've put the road in with people coming down the road.
How long would it take you? Did it take you to do this first rough sketch? Which looks like
well,
it's
actually, once I got my structure right. That's the bit I find most difficult. I suppose I'm not. I mean, I think there's two sorts of archaeological illustrations. There can be very technical ones, and then ones that are I don't know, more atmosphere, go more for atmosphere and things. There's different sorts, and they're for different purposes usually. I mean, it's not like one's better than another, but I'm definitely not so great at the technical. So I would find the first basic bit of doing the getting the building right. That's what I would find most. Once I've got that over, I sort of feel like, oh, I can make a picture of it now.
Yes, yeah. So it doesn't take very long once you've got, to get to this stage.
And it's quite enjoyable, really, because it's like you're creating a little world,
Yeah. It's already looking full of life.
Yes. Yeah.
Shall we move on?
Yes.
Ah, yes.
So after my rough was sent off to the experts, they came back and said I should include the waterfront where the Thames is. Now, it had changed from when the house was built, and it's changed because they built a series of waterfronts, making the Thames both deeper and narrower. And this is the way they did it. They built this waterfront they had these huge timbers which would look a bit like railway sleeper timbers, and then piled on top of each other horizontally. And then they created this sort of interleaven sort of box structure behind, which was infilled with soil and refuse and everything, and then planked over. So it made a very good solid landing stage. And so that's what I had to show in my picture. If we look at the next one. And there it is. So I've added that and put a couple of boats in. I imagined at this stage that it had really become a bathhouse that was sort of, it was like a bed. I imagine maybe it was like a bit of like long distance lorry drivers' bed and breakfast. So people were coming in their boats, unloading stuff, and very dirty and staying overnight, using the bathhouse and then setting off again in the morning. So I imagine something like that, because it would be very noisy and dirty if there were a lot of people bringing their cargoes and everything. And so that's what I wanted to picture in the boats. And I imagined them maybe bringing amphora, bringing oil or wine, and that sort of idea. So this is my picture with the waterfront drawn in, and that was okayed. And so that was my finished rough that I did. We look at the next one. And so that's the finished painting. Before I went right on to the finished one, what I do is I copy the, or maybe this is my,
That's
I think
the one before, isn't it?
This is my painted copy. So I copy it, photocopy it, and then stretch the paper so that you can wet it and it doesn't buckle too much, and paint it. And my idea is that I want to work out the tones and colors so that I can be sort of positive when I paint the finished picture, because you get a bit, the danger is with archaeological illustration, you put so much into doing the drawing and the detail and then tracing off to this last bit of paper and everything. And you've invested this time that you don't want to mess it up at this stage and have to go back and do it again. So you get a bit tentative and a bit careful. And that shows in the picture, it looks much blander. So what I try and do is to work this out, work out the tones and the colors so that when I do the finished picture, I can just go for it. And there's much more energy in your marks, and that shows in a much more lively picture. That's the idea anyway, whether, it doesn't always succeed, but that's what I aim for anyway. So that's my painted one.
Yeah, we did have quite a discussion over where the smoke was going to come out, didn't we?
That's right.
Because obviously both the bathhouse and eventually the house was heated with a hypercore system. And there are these tubuli, these what are they called, hollow tiles that take away the smoke from the hypercore up the walls and presumably out somewhere on the roof. So we were trying to make some decisions about where that would come out, whether there would be little chimneys or louvres or whatever. So we had quite a lot of back and forth about that, I remember.
That's right.
We decided that it would be at the eaves, didn't we?
Yes, that's right.
Excuse me.
And of course it would warm up the walls and everything, so it would...
Yeah, it's funny because the first house didn't have any heating and they had to put the heating in afterwards. So it might suggest that at first the place wasn't inhabited by someone from Britain, and they assumed that it wouldn't be too cold, and then realized that it was.
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know
that's
that.
my thinking, but
Yeah.
just an idea. And so from that, then you went on to create the final one, which I can show you again. There you go.
All right.
So the colours are a bit more muted on this one, aren't they? But
yes, it is.
It's a bit more, I suppose, realistic.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's the whole thing of how much you go at it and you're getting careful and things.
We also did have a discussion about whether there was a wall across the front of the site, I think. But,
yes, that's right. We decided that it should be much more open, shouldn't it?
Yeah, because if we
like
put
a
a wall on
private
the front,
space.
Yeah, we wouldn't have seen anything.
Well, yes.
So it's possible there was, but yeah, we're not entirely sure about that.
But then you're thinking if it was really used as an inn and people, unloading stuff, maybe they would want it to be open and sort of welcoming and, not like a private space and quiet with a garden or something. Yeah.
Well, I think, though, what our little discussion has showed is that there are a lot of decisions that you have to make when creating a reconstruction, and it's a bit of a conversation, isn't it, between you
well,
and...
I think that's very much part of it. It's not just like, the worth of it is not just what you actually end up with in the end, the image that's going to be published or in the book or whatever. It's actually the process you go through is quite valuable. And it's always like this with archaeologists. It makes them think in a different way when you have to actually depict something, and whether it works visually, and whether their ideas are are. So I think that's very much part of it and valuable in itself, really.
Yeah, it makes us stick our neck out a bit, doesn't it, about these?
Well, it did. I remember doing a picture and I asked the archaeologist whether they found it useful, and he said, it makes me very, very nervous. And you can sort of understand that, because you really put your ideas on the line, don't you, when you depict it. And of course, you know, that's their sort of, you know, this is their career and everything. They don't want, you know, they're going out on a limb a bit when you depict something, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, quite a lot of it is based on the evidence, as you said. I mean, we're looking at the east, we're looking from the east towards the west, and it's the east side where there's more evidence. Yeah. We know about the brick courses that create the red lines on the walls, and we know about the roof tiles because the roof fell in. So we have the roof tiles. We know that it was made that way. And as you say, that's similar to the way it's still made in the Mediterranean. The Bathhouse Roof was a bit more based on surviving examples from Italy and around the Med, wasn't it? Although we do have some of the roof tiles from that, but it does tend to be plastered over the top, so it's white. So that kind of went into that as well. So yeah, it's fascinating, really, to talk through it, and really great to see your process as well. Thank you. Right. So I think that's the last slide. So thank you so much, Judith, for talking to me.
That's all right.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. If you want to ask us any questions that I can then possibly put to Judith later on, I can email her and get back to you. Then you can email us. You'll find our email address on cityoflondon.gov.uk/bathhouse. You can tweet us at LDN for November Roman Baths. You'll find us on Facebook as well if you want to comment through there, or send a message if you search for Billingsgate Roman House and Baths. And we will be talking to Judith again about another little sketch that she did for us. So look out for more from Judith.